Okay. All right, welcome back to Catechesis. And because, Mike, you asked last time about some of the other, actually I should have gotten one more book, rats. Some other books that are not part of the New Testament or Old Testament canon, not part of the 66 books. I thought I'd pull these off the shelf to show you, and you can browse through these if you want later or borrow or whatever. Dead Sea Scrolls, they were found in Qumran in the late 1940s, I think 49, by a shepherd boy, as the story goes. And this contains, these generally date, I think, from 1st or 2nd century BC. And a lot of the manuscripts were biblical books. Probably the most famous is the Isaiah scroll, which I actually got to see in Jerusalem, and they have it. The museum that it's in, at least the building, it looks like the cover, the top of a scroll, kind of a onion type shape, and they have this big cylinder display, and the whole the scroll is wrapped all the way around this. And other books of the Bible, I think they found manuscripts of at least parts, and some in total of like all but a handful of the books of the Old Testament. And for the most part, with a few variations, the texts are pretty identical to the oldest manuscript that we have of the Old Testament before these were discovered. So you have this continuity over 1,000 years where it's pretty much the same. So that was great confirmation. Then there are other documents that were found that are more specific to the people that were living out in Qumran, and some other things like First Enoch, variety of things. So that's that, Dead Sea Scrolls. The Nag Hammadi Library. These were found, I believe, in Egypt, and these are 4th century manuscripts discovered in Egypt in 1945. And these are what are called Gnostic texts. There's a hint in the epistles of John, the sort of early conflict with the Gnostics. Gnosticism means knowledge. And so they claim that, the Gnostics claim that, very basically, which is about the extent that I understand Gnosticism, but the idea is that salvation is through attaining greater knowledge, a higher plane of knowledge that, and then eventually you get liberated from the body. It's a denial of the resurrection of the body. And salvation is for the soul to be freed from the body. That the ultimate knowledge, I think, is this idea of a divine spark in everyone. The force be with you. That's really a form of Gnosticism. And for this divine spark that is trapped in a human body to be freed. And so you go through these successive stages of enlightenment of knowledge. And that flourished apparently in the 4th century. It was a big problem in the early church because it had a great deal of appeal to people. And the book of Thomas, the contender. He's a contender. The Gospel of Philip, Gospel of Thomas, the Apocryphon of John, Gospel of Truth, the Apocryphon of James. So a lot of these, they're attributed to different apostles, but they were written much later. The Apocalypse of Adam. And apocalypse is the word apocalypse really literally means to reveal or uncover. And the book of Revelation is called apocalyptic. It's revelatory. So John has this great vision, and things are revealed to him in all this type of symbolic language. First Enoch, I think, is apocalyptic. It's an extended vision of Enoch. Oh, here we have one of Adam. The apocalypse of Adam, Acts of Peter and the 12 apostles. Paraphrase of Shem. I've not read any of these, but so there's that. Then we have these 2 volumes. We have, this has to do with Old Testament writings that precede the New Testament. The Old Testament pseudepigrapha. And pseudepigraphy means false writings or falsely attributed to. So let's see, table of contents here. You have the apocalypse of Abraham, apocalypse of Adam, of Elijah, of Daniel, Testament of Job, Testament of the 3 patriarchs, Testament of Moses, of Solomon, of Adam, all those kinds of things. And then, and this literature is of different types. You have expansions of the Old Testament legends, wisdom and philosophical literature, prayers, psalms, odes, things like that. So there's a lot of this material out there that scholars draw on, but none of it is canonical. None of it is a source of doctrine in the church, but they're interesting to read. Let's see, you read First Enoch, right? Some of it.
Yeah, I got.
It's kind of wild.
I got disinterested real fast.
Yeah, it's not terribly. I mean, the ancients were fascinated with this stuff. You read it, and it's just like, yeah, you get.
I'd rather read The Hobbit.
Yeah, I'd rather read The Hobbit. But, you know, these are different things that have different writings. And a lot of times, like the Gospel of Mary, and these things are always trotted out around Easter as the hidden Gospels. The church is hiding all this information from you and whatnot. So, all right. Anybody I see Nolan, you're raising your hand. That was just a reflex, right? Okay.
I just had a question about, have you ever talked with or had experience with talking with people who may have had a near-death experience? Is that something that really happens?
Okay, near-death experiences. Excellent question.
Yeah.
You have all the good ones, don't you?
I just remember reading, Heaven is for Real, about the little boy.
Yeah, and then that came out as made up.
But then I also have heard stuff with other people, like when they're in emergency room, how they say they were floating above them.
Right.
But is there any truth to that?
That is a very good question. In general, you know, if someone would come to me and say that they had such an experience, I mean, I can't flat out say, well, no, you didn't. I didn't. I wasn't there. I didn't experience it myself. Now, was it a matter of their soul left their body and their soul is seeing all this kind of stuff? My inclination would be to say no, because the soul doesn't separate from the body until the moment of death. Now, of course, they say, well, I was, I don't think there's any indication in the scripture where, our soul pops out and then right away God pops it back in. I mean, you have the resurrection of Lazarus, which we did talk about. You have other resurrections where body and soul were separated. You have the son of the widow of Nain. You have Jairus' daughter. These people had died. Body and soul were separated, which is unnatural.
So where did their souls go then?
Oh, that is a good question. That is called the intermediate state. And I get to ask this question every now and then, and usually what I do is I go to our dogmatics text and I print off a couple pages that speak about this. The Bible doesn't say a whole lot about it because the Bible isn't really sort of interested in that in-between period. Although that's what we're fascinated. We want to know, especially if a loved one has died, where are they now? What are they doing now? The emphasis in the scripture is not on now, but on the last day and going forward. So very little is said about this intermediate state. In the Old Testament, speaks of Sheol, or the underworld, or different names for it, Hades, Gehenna, the realm of the dead. Now, with Christ, Christ descends to hell, not to suffer, but to liberate the Old Testament saints, who were, it's sort of like a waiting room, I guess you could say. But in the Old Testament, everybody went to Sheol. We get this picture in one of Jesus's parables, which we have to be careful have to be a little bit careful with parables, that we don't read too much into them. At the same time, my thought is, well, Jesus wouldn't have used this parable if there wasn't some reflection of reality to it. You have the rich man and Lazarus. Both of them die. The rich man, he's in torment in Hades. Lazarus is at Abraham's bosom, and he's comforted. The picture there is similar to the Last Supper, where the beloved disciple John is, back then people reclined when you ate. You didn't sit around a table, you reclined. And so it would be a position of honor, close fellowship. And Lazarus is comforted. And so he's no longer, he suffered in this life, he's not suffering then. And between the two, the impression is given that they're sort of in the same general place, but there's the suffering part and there's the not suffering part, and there's a great chasm in between that nobody can cross one way or the other. And because he asked, send Lazarus to dip his finger in water and quench my tongue. And Abraham said, that's not possible. Is that descriptive of before the resurrection or after the resurrection? I don't know. What we do know is that when we die, when a Christian dies, body and soul are separated. The body goes in, is buried in an hopeful anticipation of the resurrection, in which body will be glorified and reunited with soul. Now, Do unbelievers are they also resurrected? Yes, very good, Kate, you got it right. You might want to remember that one. Yeah, the unbelievers are resurrected as well, and to my knowledge, body and soul are reunited as well. But they spend an eternity in torment, not an eternity in heaven, because of their unbelief. What does Jesus tell the thief on the cross? Today, you shall be in paradise. You shall be with me in paradise. So a Christian who dies is in paradise. So our souls are in paradise. Nice place. Paradise, the word is, I guess it's Persian in origin, but refers to a garden, a really nice, like the Garden of Eden. It's a happy place. A place without suffering, a place of joy. Now, is it the final destination? No, because we're only there in soul, not in body. What awaits everyone is the full participation in heaven of body and soul. Now, whether we call that paradise, heaven, but it's body and soul together. But, there's a debate, I mentioned it briefly this morning. When we die, our bodies rest in the tomb. Does our soul sleep? It's called soul sleep. To where basically we take a nap and then at the resurrection our body is woken up and then we're woken up too. Or do we have, conscious existence in this in-between time? That parable would suggest that we're not napping, that we have some sort of conscious awareness, but that there's nothing that causes us grief or pain. Revelation, of course, this is picture language, so you gotta be a little bit careful with picture language. But we get the image of the saints in heaven, and they're very much awake. And they are worshiping. And we join on Sunday morning, we join in with the heavenly choirs, angels, archangels, and all the company of heaven. Laud and magnify your glorious name. Heaven and earth come together. Answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, I think I hit all the main points with that. But
Leanne Parsons this morning told a story. She was in the emergency room treating a guy who'd passed away, and they revived him back. And the first words out of his mouth were, "That's the best sleep I've ever had."
Yeah. Oh, that's right. You asked about near-death experiences. Yeah. I got away from that. I wouldn't say that someone didn't have that experience. How to interpret that experience, whether it is a matter of, the brain is still functioning and, whether it has a purely natural explanation, psychological explanation, or whether it's supernatural, I don't know. Is it a source of comfort, or is it a source of fear? Is it a source of false comfort? Someone who's not a believer, and they have a near-death experience, and oh yeah, I saw grandma and grandpa and all these people and the light at the end of the tunnel. It's like Shrek. Shrek, if you see a bright, stay away from the light. if they're feeling great peace, my thought is, even if it's just purely physical, Satan is using it to give them a false comfort. It's kind of, how is it used, is what I would go with. But, I wouldn't be in a position to say that it never happened, because I wasn't there.
Well, I've never encountered anybody.
Right, I haven't either. Nobody's
Kinda
ever
like
come
when
to me
people
about
say
that.
they've seen ghosts, I'm like, why would any ghosts visit me?
Well, actually, come to think of it, I have had one or two people say that they believe that they were visited by a departed loved one, and it brought them great comfort. Am I gonna throw a wet blanket on that? No, I'm not. Unless it would give them a false comfort, or if it would trouble them. Otherwise, I'm probably just I wasn't there. If, however, it is something that would lead them to false comfort or to worry. I'll give you an example. My dad, before he died, about a week or so, he told my mom, "It's so beautiful, it's so beautiful. I'd tell you, but you won't understand." My dad didn't have a college education, my mom did. So for him to say that to her, it was something that he knew that she really wouldn't be able to understand. Did my dad get a glimpse of heaven, sort of like Stephen? I see the Son of Man, see it. And did that comfort him as he faced death? It brought him great joy. It comforted him. It comforted my mom. It comforts me. Did he really have a glimpse of heaven, or was it, the morphine? I can't say for certain. We are at the end of our time, unless anybody else has a question. And for those of you who will be watching this later, let's see, this is the 18th. We have confirmation coming up on the 2nd. So we'll keep, ideally, I'd love for us to keep meeting all summer. But I don't know how you parents feel about that.
It's up to you.
Okay. Let me think about it. I mean, because we've missed so many classes, although I've done the recordings, I also want to be aware of summer and vacations and that. I'll give it some thought. Either way, and maybe you can, talking with your kids, maybe come up with a list of topics, whether we touch on them over the summer or next year, to kind of guide things. But we'll definitely meet 2 more weeks in April?
What's today?
Actually, 1 more week in April, isn't it? Today's the 18th, so 25th.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely meet next Sunday, and we'll see about summer. But definitely keep doing your "we believe," the Lord will answer. Keep doing that, because that's where the main catechism teaching is at. And it's spread out a little bit at a time. And that allows us to use this time to address more of these types of issues, or subjects, not issues per se. But have a blessed week, and Levi, time for your examination. We could even film it for everybody's enjoyment. No, okay.
That's okay, go fast.
Field pass, yes. I have every confidence.